Hello, this is Edith Newmeyer, and I'm the author of the book The Mystery of Adam. Well, I kind of want to wrap up so far the things I talked about Messiah and his bride, things that I have kind of discovered. I said that the bride of Messiah was hidden very, very strongly in the Old Testament. And even though that the Bible really stresses the lineage of men, like, for instance, all the mentioned people in Genesis are men. You know, Adam to the next, all the way to Noah, to Shem, to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all of them are men. Okay? And so we can see this lineage, of course, and then Messiah's lineage continues from Shem, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then to Judah. Okay, David. They're all men, but yet there is a hidden factor in Messiah that people usually don't talk about. And of course, this hidden factor is also present in the order of Melchizedek, and that is the bride. Okay, the bride of Messiah, the bride of Melchizedek, or Melchi, King, Zedek, righteousness. So there's also a bride there, and this bride is coexistent with this Melchizedek, with this Messiah, which most people don't, again, not talk about. Also, again, I said the women are not mentioned in these lineages most of the time. And then, they kind of blend in a little bit, like Sarah. And then, we hear about, of course, Leah, Rachel. And then we go to Tamar. Um, then we go to Ruth, Rahab. And these women, of course, are mentioned in the line of Jesus, which I believe were mentioned in Luke. Okay, because Luke mentions these women as well. Because the lineage of Jesus does not go through or does not come through the men, but this lineage really comes through the woman. Okay, he says the seed of the woman, and that keeps going from one generation to another, the seed of the woman. But most of these women we don't hear about, and they're kind of hidden in this whole thing. I think maybe God wanted to hide this precious jewel on purpose so Satan couldn't destroy it. That is very possible. It's also possible that Satan was hiding this information about the bride. So now we have looked at several representations of this bride, of this female side of Messiah. Okay, we have said that the female side of Messiah, in my last videos, I talked about the order of Melchizedek, that this female side is a priesthood, okay, a priesthood of believers, with Christ being the high priest. And then also, I said that when we talk about the temple which the Messiah will build, that also includes this female side, which again is the bride of Messiah, uh, of course, which is symbolized by the holy place in the temple or in the tabernacle. And so then we continue, and I already addressed a little bit the bride. And I just want to kind of also talk a little about bride, because the bride then leads us to the church. The church was not talked about in the Old Testament at all. And it was Paul's job to tell us at least a little bit about the church. Now, I don't think Paul totally understood this concept. Paul came from a very hierarchical, patriarchal culture in which there was a hierarchy. Okay, and there's, you look at the whole society of Paul was hierarchical, and yet this new church that he was talking about, and he kind of understood it. I mean, he explained it very well, that this church is not hierarchical at all. It is equal. We are all serving one another. It is built on servanthood, not on authority, not having authority over. Matter of fact, the whole Messiah, if we really get down to it, is built on equality. And I know people will struggle with that, because people say, well, Christ is the head. Yes, that's because so many people think that head has something to do with authority, having authority over. However, that is not if we're looking at the Greek language, that is not what this original word kephale or kephale uh, conveys, is an authority. And so if you look at, for instance, Ephesians, where Paul addresses this order, what people think was an order, we again see that there is no hierarchy. Christ came to die for his bride. Huh. How much hierarchy is there, right? I mean, he died for us. He died on the cross. He gave everything. He gave his life. He gave everything. He gave his standing as equal God, as God, and came down and made himself for a short time to become a human being in order to save us. I mean, how lowly did he get? Yes, God is over everything, but within the body, he became a servant. And that servanthood is what he told and preached and taught to the disciples. Servanthood. So it's a very different concept, and I will talk about that some more later on. But I just wanted to bring this in because now I want to move more towards the church and looking at the bride of Christ. Now, a good thing to do when we want to understand about the bride is the traditional Hebrew marriage ceremony or marriage arrangement. That would be a good one to look at, because here we can see how Jesus went through the steps of getting this bride. Okay, he went through the same steps that a bridegroom would go through in order to acquire or secure or whatever, get his bride. So I think I mentioned this vigilant Texan before, because he has a really good presentation, and so I don't have to kind of go over that again. Just go to his channel called The Vigilant Texan, and he has something on betrothal. Okay, the Jewish or the Hebrew betrothal. Let's see if I can find it. vigilant Texan. And I will I'll put the information on the bottom. It says called the Hebrew Betrothal, okay, which is really a great study of this betrothal happens. We see that the betrothal is really a contract that the bridegroom made with the bride. Bridegroom goes, and I'm gonna say a little bit about it, but if you really want to go into detail, go to this vigilant Christian, not vigilant Texan. And we can see this very good with Mary and Joseph. So the bridegroom goes to the father or the parents of the bride and tells, of course, them that this person is interested, in getting married to their daughter. Okay, and this goes with they use symbolic things with the wine, which I think is really great because the wine is representative of Christ's blood. Okay, so Christ, and the first thing he does to betroth is he dies for us, right? He sheds his own blood, which is the price, the betrothal price that he is bringing, to the bride. Now, here is what happens. A lot of people think, oh, the father arranges the marriage and the bride has no say in the matter. Well, that's not so. Okay, so when this bridegroom comes for his bride, then the bride is being brought in, if it's okay with the father, I guess. And the bride needs to be asked. The bride has to listen to the bridegroom and what he has to present, what kind of, what kinds of ideas he has for the marriage, how he's providing for her, what kind of plans they have. And so the bride has to listen to all that. And if she, agrees with it, then they will, kind of continue this process. So they write up a contract, which is basically what we consider the vows. Okay, and that's the first step. That's the betrothal step. Okay, then when they agree to it, and that all kind of think about it, all goes along with the wine thing too, that which I thought was really great. And I don't remember exactly how that went, but the wine is very important. Drinking the wine as a proof of the covenant is very important. So this contract was never done in front of a court or anything. It was done within the family. Okay, verbal contract within the family, or probably the families. The families were, of course, aware of that. And then the bridegroom goes and prepares a place for the bride. Okay, and that is in the olden days. And this time period, I think, in the new marriage ceremonies, Jewish marriage, is a little bit different. Nowadays, the bride doesn't have to wait for years for the bridegroom, to prepare a place. But in olden days, that's the way it was. So Jesus goes and prepares a place for the bride, and then, of course, he returns in the middle of the night, as we know from the parable of the virgins. He can come in the middle of the night to pick up his bride. Okay, so at least that's what Jesus does. So during that time, The bridegroom prepares a place for the bride, and the bride prepares herself and, if you want to say, her household, um, for the time by the time the bride is coming back. Household means, well, all the stuff for the household was her job. Okay, I still grew up that way. Okay, when I was a little kid, every birthday, I was giving things that would make up my household, like pots, pans, silverware, sheets. Sheets was a very important one for me, and I hated that. I hated it so much because I never wanted to get married in the first place. So, but anyways, happened anyways. So, and then I got married when I was 18, despite of all that, even if because I didn't want to. So the bride is responsible for acquiring these things, and then when the bridegroom comes, picks her up, she brings all her cooking utensils and the whole kitchen, in a sense, to the bridegroom. So then the real marriage is going to happen. Okay, the marriage where maybe the whole town comes together and celebrates and blah blah blah, and then of course the bride goes in the marriage chamber, um, which we do when the bride returns, for a certain period of time. Of course, they go into the marriage chamber, and the friends and the family, they celebrate, okay, until they come out and celebrate with the rest. So, but it's kind of, I just gave you like a short version. Listen to this vigilant Texan because he does a really great job of explaining it. But what I'm trying to say is that this ceremony of the bridegroom um, bride parallels very, very closely this ceremony that Christ went through, okay, to acquire his bride. And again, I think I didn't stress this enough. That it is up to the bride and the bridegroom to work out the marriage vows. Okay, this is not like in the heathen cultures where the bride was bought and now she's the property of the man. That's not the way it's supposed to be in the Hebrew tradition, even though it may have ended up that way because the Hebrews always strayed away from God's laws. It may have ended up that way, but um, traditionally, it's supposed to be an equal partnership where both draw up the vows. The woman has to agree to this contract. The woman has to agree that she's going to get married to that person. If she doesn't, it cannot happen. So there's free will, and I think that is very important. Okay, nobody can become the bride unless they choose for themselves. If they don't choose, nothing will happen. And that is the case with Jesus. Jesus's bride is because she has chosen the bridegroom. She has agreed with the conditions that were put on the table. And so that is very, very, I think that is very, very important. But again, it parallels what Jesus did for us. And it can be very nicely seen in this marriage ceremony of the Hebrew marriage ceremony. So I will do a short one today. And so I'm coming to the end. But watch this guy and also do some more research yourself on this marriage ceremony. Okay, where this betrothal, because that's what they call it. It's betrothal. Oh, I forgot to say, it can take one to 2 years for the bridegroom to return. 1 to 2 years. Okay, so pretty long time. Well, the bridegroom does need time to create this place for his bride. And so that's just how long it will take. So anyways, I'll finish up for today and I will talk more about the bride going into the church time. Because again, the church is the bride of Christ. And when we look at the church, we can see a lot more about how bride and bridegroom kind of work together. Keep studying and put some comments on the bottom if you have some interesting thoughts about it.